It's Thursday, December 12th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast presented by healthcare.gov. It is a hell of a day to talk ball, and join me to do just that is Nate Tice. Nate, what's going on, buddy?
Not too much. I'm surprised we still have words left after our rookie roundup brouhaha that we had on Football 301 yesterday, but we do. We always do, and we have Thursday Night Football picks, so don't you worry, listeners. But yes, I'm doing very, very well today, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it was very funny. We posted the episode, Football 301. Obviously, you want to check it out. We talked about a bunch of rookies. Definitely, some of the stuff that we talked about there will be applicable to your fantasy teams, your dynasty teams, everything. So I think I would encourage people to check it out. I did find it funny that when I tweeted the episode out, or at some point, last night, one of the first replies that we got was needed more defense. I'm like, dog, that was like a 90-minute show. I think if we did any longer, we would have been, we would have been in some trouble. So I don't know if we could have fit
fifth
more
round corners, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Maybe we could have been more respectful to the other side of the ball, but alas, what can you do?
That's all. I know. It wasn't that. It's not as sexy when there's those first 14 picks for offense.
Right.
In that draft, it kind of speaks for itself. What type of content there's going to be 9 months later. Guess what? In 4 years from now, when contracts come up, guess which positions they're going to say, is there an influx of offensive linemen in the league now? After we talked about 15 offensive linemen yesterday. So that's how it always works. There's a defensive tackles are the premium position now, conversations we had the last year or so. And it was because a whole bunch of good defensive tackles got drafted 4 years ago. And all their contracts came up at the same time. Just know who gets paid. It happens. It's based on the draft 4 years earlier. So if in 4 years, when people go, man, are edge players out of vogue now because no one's getting paid? Just look at this year's class to see maybe that's more, there's some good ones. But yeah, maybe that's why the defensive focus was a little less than quarterbacks, offensive line, and receivers and everything else that happened in our show yesterday.
Well, if you came to this show hoping for a follow-up on some of those, maybe expansion of the defensive players, you've made a huge mistake because Nate joins us every week for the Fantasy Film Room, where we did actually last week do a full defensive breakdown, but typically we're talking about the offensive side of the ball, obviously on a fantasy show. So this week on the Fantasy Film Room, we're going to do what we always do. Nate mentioned it. We're going to end with Thursday Night Football, looking at some props. We got an injury report segment to get to. We have a very fun rookie-based segment that Nate is going to talk about what he's nerding out about this week. But we start the topic, as we always do, with a big picture look. And this week's is kind of fun because the big picture topic we're focusing on for the Fantasy Film Room is basically, I would call it some quarterback reputation laundering that's been done this year. Look, we have a fun way to get into this. We often hear, in dating, I can fix him or her. Nate, I don't know if you've ever done it. I have.
My wife said it to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, actually, I've been on probably both sides of it. I've been I can fix her, and people have definitely said about me, I can fix him. You talk about cyclical nature of NFL players and contracts. Human beings are sometimes cyclical. I've been the one that maybe needed to fix, and then definitely been the one that needed fixing. I wonder, maybe I should ask my wife about which one I was when we started dating. Just kidding. I don't have to ask. Anyways, Point is, Point is, NFL teams often use kind of this same mindset with quarterbacks that didn't have success in one situation, but maybe they can have success in ours. It didn't work out for them, but maybe it will work out for us. Actually, I would say lately there's been some real deal success stories taking this approach. We have 3 kind of massive projects at the position that have been fixed. 2 players are leading surprise playoff teams in new locations in Russell Wilson and Sam Darnold. Both are supporting major fantasy impact players as well. We also have Bryce Young, who is not in a new location, but is maybe in a new situation because we was, unceremoniously benched. And now with a new coaching staff and some new players around him, he's showing signs of why he went first overall in the draft last year. I've seen a lot of people tweeting like, oh, there he is.
There it is.
There's Alabama Bryce. That's the Alabama Bryce we know. So anyways, we're going to talk about these 3 players, these sort of fixer-upper quarterbacks. How did it happen? Why is it working? And what do we expect to happen, not just the rest of the season, but also maybe into next year, but with a major focus, obviously, for people's fantasy playoff runs these next few weeks. So let's get it started with, to me, the biggest surprise here, maybe, and maybe I'm stupid for being, I was very skeptical of Russell Wilson when he was traded to the Denver Broncos. Right. Was very vocal on this show about being kind of like, are we sure about this? I was kind of a little iffy on the receivers, was very iffy on the Hackett stuff, and even some of the Russell Wilson, like how is it going to translate to a very different offense? Mm-hmm. I think I was proven correct about that, but what I've not been correct about is this next team that he's gone to, which is obviously the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Nate, I'm sure you were probably skeptical. I think everybody that did football analysis was skeptical about what was going to happen with Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. Why has it worked so far? And then obviously we could talk about what we expect to see going forward.
Yeah, I'd say too is that I looked at Russell and Justin Fields as almost like, well, it's 50-50, sure. And if these guys are tied or close to tied, go with the younger, faster, bigger one, totally. In Fields. And that was kind of my thinking on all of it because watching Russell at the end with the Broncos, watching him kind of just not try stuff, maybe a couple balls to Sutton, but really just become a safer quarterback, especially on third down where he's checking down a lot. His creation, because he's older, we're the same age, has weaned a little bit. So he's not doing as much as the twirly bird and run around stuff, the whole Fran Tarkenton-esque stuff that he was doing early in his career, which made me go, I don't know how well this is going to work. That was a big part of his magic. And what Russell Wilson with the Steelers, why it's really improving too, is the offensive line has gotten healthier, has gotten a little bit better. Also, this offensive structure is perfect for Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. As much as let Russ cook, let Russ do this thing that happened in the end of the Seahawks terms, and then what led to his trade to the Broncos about like he wanted to be more that almost he loves Drew Brees, Russell Wilson. That was his idol. He wants to be seen as a Drew Brees type quarterback. Get in the shotgun, look, spread it out, check, dink and dunk, nickel and dime. And he couldn't be any more opposite of a player than Drew Brees. And I think once he got to Pittsburgh, this is back into now when he's not the guy. I think maybe he doesn't have that ego to be in that type of system where it's like, okay, it's a run first, heavy play action, big pockets, with tight ends helping with the protection. Darnell Washington. They got a whole bunch of tight ends on their roster. Pruitt, Freiermuth. But this is more of a conducive system for him. And if anyone watching us on YouTube sees I have a Wisconsin helmet behind me, this was the type of offense that Russell thrived in at Wisconsin in 2011. This is the type of offense that Russell thrived in his early tenure with the Seahawks, with Marshawn Lynch and the rest of the kind of that offensive system. Run first, run second, high variance, high leverage go balls and vertical attacks. It's a classic run first, explosive pass game. But what's been cool watching with Russ is that it's turned into a touchdown to check down type throwing style, which works for this offense. The run game is going to help it always be sustainable. And now they've improved and it's gotten a little bit better. And if you even just look at his stats right now, he success rate wise, Russ is middle of the pack, 18th, 16th, depending on which one you look at. But then if you look at things like EPA per dropback, he's 9th. But you look at explosive pass rate, Russell is 2nd among all qualifying quarterbacks. 18% of his passes have gone for a 16-yard or more completion. And that's 2nd in the league among qualifying quarterbacks. Who is first, actually? I'm going to look that up. Oh, Lamar Jackson's first. Lamar Jackson is at 18.3%. Russ is at 18.1%. So he is up there. And that's the system. That works for Russ. Russ throws a beautiful go ball, a beautiful moon ball. That works with Pickens when he's healthy. That works but that just works for this system. I had some hesitations because of what Arthur Smith's passing game has looked like in the past off play action. A lot of in-breakers and stuff over the middle. I was like, is that going to work? What they have kind of, this is why Arthur Smith is a good coach. Believe it or not, he is. What they have worked is, no, Russ wants to attack over the top. So it's overs and corners and goes and posts, not stuff that's digs and in-breakers over the middle. So they've just really worked to his strengths, and this kind of offensive attack works to his strengths. And he's not doing the creation stuff. It's really just a lot of one and done reads, one and done, one to check down. Against the Bengals was a really good example of that. He checked the ball down over and over again, and they worked great. but that's just the offensive tech works perfect for Russell Wilson's skill set at 36 years old. And that's why we just seen this. Like, this is a good fit of player skill set and offensive type, or offensive philosophy, I should say. So it's been fun to watch. I mean, it's not always pretty. It's not going to be the most efficient passing game, but it's always going to have the threat of that explosive attack because of the run game, and because the run game, they can rely on that.
So much good stuff there. The one thing that I would point to is this dawned on me when I was charting Jerry Jeudy and watching Courtland Sutton last year, is that especially with Sutton, who he had a good connection with. Russ had a good connection with Sutton, but it was specifically in the ways like 50% of what Courtland Sutton's game is, because 50% of it is definitely sidelines, contested catches, go balls, because he's a big receiver that's always worked really well in tight coverage. He and Russ overlapped very well there, but where he and Russ did not overlap was the other 50% of Courtland Sutton's game, which is the digs over the middle of the field. And that is where Bo Nix, by the way, so cleanly overlaps. So it's funny because we've seen him, and that was why I didn't really draft a lot of Courtland Sutton this year. I think I only have him on one team, and frankly, I might have picked him up off the waiver wire when people dropped him, or was dropped early in the season. I didn't draft a lot of him because I was like very skeptical of, all right, this part of his game with Russ, he's going to miss that. Can Bo Nix do this? The answer with Bo Nix has obviously been yes. So that's why Sutton's had this season this year. The Jerry Jeudy part of it, even if I've been a very, very big Jerry Jeudy kind of like skeptic for him for the vast majority of his career, and you and I have talked about this. I think we share kind of the same opinion about him as a player. There's no doubt about it that there were plays where Jeudy was wide open over the middle on some of these like big in-breaking routes that Russ just would completely turn him down. Like you said, either take it to the sideline with Sutton or just check it down. And that was kind of like, there's part of this where I just was very skeptical again of what Russ being able to do that in the Arthur Smith offense. But it is a huge credit to Arthur Smith, I think, for expanding this offense. Like, we're going to start talking about head coaching candidates in the offseason soon, and I know Arthur Smith is he's legitimately a trigger word in the fantasy community. Whoever hires him is probably going to get raked over the coals. I think he's done a great job coaching, and the results show it this year. Over the middle of the field, deep and short middle of the field, Russell Wilson, 23 of 30, 76.7% completion rate, 146.4 passer rating, 3 touchdowns, 0 picks, 11.3 yards per attempt. He's been great over the middle, and I think it's been cutting out some of those like intermediate middle where he just doesn't really want to work. Instead, it's the big, deep passes and then slants to George Pickens, because that's where Russell Wilson has worked really well over the course of the last few years. Is he'll hit you on a slant. He'll hit you on some of those quicker in-breaking routes. That was part of what he did, again, well with Courtland Sutton, not so much with Jeudy, who's more of like a wacky slant route runner. Yeah. Instead of just
footwork king.
The footwork king, instead of just plant your foot, break inside. And I think Pickens, to his credit, when he's been healthy, that is where I've seen his game take another level, is on those routes. So he's worked really well with the offensive coordinator. He's worked really well with the number one wide receiver, who's so clearly the engine of the pass game. I think the question now is, what's it look like the rest of the season, especially because Pickens, and this injury is killing my fantasy teams. It is killing my fantasy teams, the George Pickens thing. He might miss multiple weeks because the hamstring injury is worse than we think. So no Pickens, how does that change the equation potentially the rest of the season for Russell Wilson?
I mean, it's going to, because that is his guy, and that's how this offensive attack is. It's primarily going through it. I think they just lean more into the run. I think actually this matchup against the Eagles is not the greatest one for us, because it requires quarterbacks to be very, safe and nickel dimey and then maybe take a shot. And Russ is kind of the opposite now. It's tough. If it was Pickens was out there, and I like some of these matchups, like I like it against the Ravens, that's in 2 weeks. But I think it's just going to hinder some of that, where it has to be a little bit more safer, a little bit. It's not going to have those go balls, those Pickens is like a 70-30 guy instead of a 50-50 guy. So it absolutely is going to hinder it. So that explosive pass rate that I just brought up will probably get dinged a little bit. And I think the efficiency, though, will stay the same, because he doesn't target Pickens to be efficient. It's such a funny thing to say like that. It's going to hinder him, I think, for the touchdowns, for the big chunk plays. but I think the rest of the stats and the rest of the thing will look the same. So fantasy wise, it's probably not going to be as great. I think that's pretty obvious just hearing how I'm talking, but I think it's just because that touchdown threat is gone. Like, was he going to throw up to Van Jefferson? Like Ben Skoranek, I like those guys. I like Skoranek as like a dirty work guy, but they're just not going to have that vertical threat that you'd want. Is Calvin Austin healthy? Oh God, I forgot. But with Calvin Austin is not a go ball guy. Calvin Austin is a move guy. And so that is just a little different too, as far as just the skill set of the receivers that he has remaining. So obviously it's going to hurt. I mean, I think that's just kind of what without even kind of course. Yeah, I don't think I'm out of saying anything. Oh God, I was about to say like a Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald used to always like say in interviews, like he used to like say old sayings, but he always be like, I'm not telling tales out of school now. And now it's like one of those where it's like in my head now. But that's what I feel like I'm saying right now. But yeah, obviously it's going to hurt. They're going to have to figure out. Mike Williams provides a little bit of that, but it's like a 60% version of George Pickens at this part.
I mean, nobody played. They rotated a ton in this last game, and that makes sense because, like you said, none of these guys are real feature players. I mean, Van Jefferson leads the team. It leads the wide receiver room in routes. Calvin Austin about 52%. Mike Williams and Scotty Miller both at about like 45%. Nobody had more than 4 targets. I think outside of Jalen Warren maybe had. I'm just gonna look it up real quick, but like they spread the ball out a ton, which makes sense. Like nobody is gonna come in here and be the feature player. Even Pat Freiermuth had 3 targets. So it was no one. Yeah, Jalen Warren had 5 targets, and that led the team. I think that's what it's going to look like. I don't know how that's going to work against the Eagles. And frankly, like even if Pickens is back, or if he's like less than 100% against the Ravens, I talked about this when they faced the Ravens last time. This Steelers attack, because it is still very, even if they're doing a bit more in the deep middle and the short middle, that intermediate area is still kind of a problem spot for them, and that's really where Baltimore is weakest because they've had issues with Roquan Smith and the linebacker position, some of the communication over the middle of the field. So I don't think that it's like Russ's fantasy ceiling, I think, is going to be a little bit more limited in these next 2 weeks. Obviously without Pickens, but even in that matchup, just against the Ravens, it could be a little more.
No, Arthur Smith, we might see a little bit more run to Cordero Patterson.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, we got an injury. Throw 84 at it. that kind of just seems to be his answer, his magic marker for everything. But I was looking too. I was trying to compare Russ's stats from prior years to this year, and like. I think the number one stat, even outside the EPA stuff I brought, explosive pass stuff, all that, is he's scrambling at only 3% this year. Before this last year with the Broncos, he was scrambling at 7%. So he's cut it in half. And I think that's a lot in the confidence in the offense and the confidence in Arthur Smith going like, hey, this is what you are now. Yeah. And sometimes you need to kind of like be humbled a little bit and just go, all right, I can't get away with what I used to get away with. Like he has 44 rushing yards this year. Last year he had 341. And I know he missed some games because Fields was playing and everything, but it's just kind of funny to look at the drastic difference of like he's a pocket quarterback, but it's bombs away and check downs. And that's just the offensive system right now.
Yeah, having 2 very strong personalities in Arthur Smith and obviously Mike Tomlin running the team. Okay, like we're going to build you up, but also this is what you are. They've done a really good job with that. If I'm Pittsburgh, number one, I think I could win a playoff game with this formula. I think they're going to go to the playoffs. I think they can win a playoff game with this formula.
I think you and I have been on the same. I mean, you were way ahead, I think, of going like, hey, this defense is very real. I was like, oh, they're good. But what I think you've said this whole year is this defense is real. This run game is real now. That can win a playoff game in this AFC. And then you just have to be above the thresholds I've looked at is 40% success rate in rushing, 14% explosive pass rate. Well, they're at 18%. And I know Pickens has to be healthy for that to be real. They have a formula to win a playoff game. Not saying, they're going to be contenders, but it's more, again, this is way different Steelers team than recent last few years with Pickett and Mason Rudolph at quarterback and everything. Russ has given them at least some live arm and live ammunition to at least throw the ball and create some chunk plays.
Yeah, third seed right now. I mean, they'd play Denver in the postseason, which obviously storyline that would be
juicy.
But I'd give them I don't know how I'd pick that game. I think I'd probably go Pittsburgh just because they're at home. They'd be at home in this scenario. But like otherwise, yeah. I mean, I'd give them a chance to win that game and then see what happens. And by the way, like I don't know what they're going to do with Russ's contract, but I think they should probably try to bring him back next year. So like I really like this. I think there's some stability here, but from a bottom line perspective, the next couple weeks, a lot of it does come back to is George Pickens out there. If he's not, I think that like he's definitely proven himself to be a difference maker this year.
What's Pickens' target share? I don't have it handy. Is it like just absurd? Because
it's gotta be.
Maybe not because he hits the backs a lot, so maybe it's not as crazy.
Well, and also over the course of the season, updating it right now. I mean, his air yard share is 45.5%. Target share is about 25. Air yard share
stats. I love that that's become more prominent. That's a fun one.
Same. Same. Yeah. His target share is about 40. It's 25%. Yeah, 45.5%. That's fifth in the league, behind AJ Brown, Rashid Shaheed when he's healthy, Calvin Ridley, and then Malik Neighbors and then George Pickens. So I mean, yeah, it's definitely up there. AJ Brown, by the way, is just shy of 50% air yard share. That's pretty berserk.
Wow.
And still Pickens is 11th is still league, by the way, in target share. So like on a per game kind of basis. So yeah, he's obviously great. Let's move to the next team here. Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold. You're the Sam Darnold oligarch of the two of us. Talk about I may have been right on the Steelers defense. I was not right on this Vikings team this year. Darnold has played so above expectations. Yeah. It's a huge credit to the coaching staff there, Kevin O'Connell, the work they've done with him. Nate, why has this worked?
Oh, having Justin Jefferson and Kevin O'Connell really helps. Will help any type of quarterback back there. And this is, again, it's another smart coach in O'Connell that goes, all right, Sam Darnold is I've been calling him dice roll Darnold. It's that he can get hot. And he is willing to push the ball and he's willing to stay aggressive and be a dummy, even if after he makes a bad play, he's willing to come right back in there and chuck it. And I think their offensive attack has truly just been like, all right, like you're going to get us for some sacks. Like even against the Falcons, he got sacked 4 times. And the play, and I even joked about this yesterday on the show, but this 2-play sequence is kind of like encapsulates the Vikings all like overall. 1st and 10. Sam Darnold takes a sack for 9 yards. And a little leaky offensive line play. He's trying to do too much, takes a 9-yard sack. The next play, they just run a deep dig to Justin Jefferson, 25-yard gain, get it right back.
Must be nice.
Like it was nothing. Most offenses would be like, all right, shut it down, run a draw, drive over. When this team is down, when this team is backed up, when this team has a 3rd and long, a 2nd and long, they just took a sack, they just had a negative play, they don't let it affect them. So in a way, they have like molded their offense off of their quarterback's personality. They got this Southern California bro and Sam Darnold, who everyone has said is so even keeled in a good and bad way. Sometimes you want him to get a little more amped up, but they kind of just went, hey, let's just keep chucking grenades. This is great. And when you have the receivers like Jefferson, like Addison, like Hawkinson getting back, when you have a running back like Aaron Jones, it's a very explosive offense. And they're the most explosive passing game in the league. Like that is why it works for Darnold. And now he can also scramble way better than Kirk Cousins. And that's provided a nice little bailout for this offense too. That maybe, if you're going to blitz, if you're going to really chuck it, defenses will heat you up a little bit to try and force the ball out of the quarterback's hands. And Darnold's ability to run just provides that just escape valve. Because if you get blitzed, running back has to protect, tight end has to protect. They don't get out into a check down. So then it becomes a touchdown to scramble kind of stuff or kind of operation for the quarterback. That's perfect for Darnold. So even the blitzing, which could kind of, maybe limit some of Darnold, maybe get him to do some negative stuff, has really even played into his hands and played into the offense's hands. So it's going to be, he's volatile. Like this is the type of player he is. But then when he gets hot and he avoids any mistakes, you see how it looks against the Falcons or the fourth quarter, I would say the last quarter and a half against the Cardinals the week before, is that they can go on a run. So it's very real. Like this isn't like luck. It's just that he can crap out and have bad moments. It's just that they have leaned into his explosive play ability and they just have figured out different ways to get to it. Play action, deep drop back concepts. There's not a lot of quick game and like easy throws in this offense. And that's just because that's what, you don't want Darnold to like make a bunch of quick decisions. You just want him to unpin grenades and chuck it. and it works. Like, but again, it's good coaching a good surrounding system that has helped unlock that. And yeah, this is what we see now where he's chucking up 5 touchdowns and getting MVP talk, which I don't agree with, but he's earned himself some money. I will say this season, because it shows a path of viability for Darnold, even if he does have some of the bad negative moments.
Yeah. I'm curious if we think this translates to the next one in Bryce Young, but I would say 2 kind of crossovers between these 2 guys. One, the first thing I'm going to say is I like Canales, but I'm not there yet. I think these are 2 top 5 head coaches in the NFL, and Mike Tomlin and Kevin O'Connell. Just like if I again, Dave Canales, we'll see. But I mean, with these 2 guys, that's a big part of it. Like if I was drafting coaches league wide, these are among my 5 first picks is Tomlin and O'Connell for sure. So that is a huge part of why what I'm about to say. The second thing is why this has worked. It's these guys have leaned into the personality and the stylings of their quarterbacks. And that's the part I'm curious if you think that that's the case with Young and Canales, but we'll get to that in a second. Certainly for what we just said with Wilson and what we're saying now with Darnold, what you're saying here is that like, yeah, they haven't asked him to get in, like do a bunch of quick game and all that stuff. Like you have like lean into your better instincts.
Yep.
And the more you do that, I think the less you're going to lean into your bad tendencies. And those plays are still there. Watch the Jaguars game. Okay. Like there are moments even against a bad defense when he can lean into sort of overly chaos mode, right? So I think this is real, like you said, 100%. I would also say too, the other thing that stands on me, these guys have really good players, okay? Justin Jefferson, obviously, but even when this Sam Darnold stuff was going on at the beginning of the year, you know, one of the things that I sort of pointed out was what's impressive about this is they don't even have their deck fully stacked yet. You know, Hawkinson wasn't out there. With Addison,
Jalen Naylor reps,
right? Yeah,
Josh Oliver.
Addison wasn't like fully. I think he dealt with injuries to start the year, but also he just wasn't fully activated since week 12. I guess this is obviously a small sample size. But like Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson, so like that's a whole separate conversation. When they get man coverage, TJ Hawkinson leads the team with 6.6 yards per route run against man coverage, which is berserk.
It's like double elite numbers.
Yeah, like double elite numbers, and he's a freaking tight end, you know. Yeah. So he's been like, all right, we get man coverage. It's a late down, third down. He is my safety blanket type player. Having that for Darnold, it's Sam Darnold, yo. Like that matters a lot for him to have a safety blanket, especially against man coverage on late downs, beyond just the deep stuff with Addison and Jefferson. And when they get the zone coverage, Addison 3.6 yards per route run. To go back to man coverage thing for a second, like nobody else is over 2. Like no one's even close in terms of yards per route run against man coverage. Addison is second with 1.15 against man coverage since week 12. So again, when you look at the zone coverage stuff, that's where Addison has really made his big plays. It's the isolated routes, mostly in breakers. He's done a little bit more with the outbreaking stuff this year. I'm still, I was a little like on Addison coming out of his rookie year, so I'm still kind of like figuring out and recalibrating maybe to this hot stretch that he's on right now. But yeah, the fact that he has these really good players and he's doing a lot to elevate these good players, that's a big part of why this is working too.
Yeah. And I mean, we already talked, you can only gush about Jefferson so much, but it must be said, like how much of an influence he has on the rest of this offense and team, really. Like they get certain looks that other teams don't get. And now O'Connell is now in year 3 of like the Jefferson offense. Like, okay, this is what defenses do against us. So now they've added so many changeups. And that's why Addison goes off, because you can tell when a team is really skewing to Jefferson. Jefferson went off too against the Falcons, but but every time, all those big plays to Addison, the deep safety, whether it was Jesse Bates or Simmons for the Falcons, was so leaned heavily to Jefferson's side. And now that Addison can win a one-on-one, or he's such a smart player. He's just a smart football player. Yeah. Addison is. God, I wish he was 20 pounds heavier. Same, or even 10. Yeah. But it's tough because he's a one-on-one guy. He's
just not a good player against press. And I mean, you can do stuff to get away with that. That's fine. But anyways, continue.
No. It's a good point. And that's why I'm with you. I liked him a lot coming out, but I was like, I would have been more comfortable with him in the second round, but I get how drafts work and everything.
Yeah, totally.
But it's nice that he's showing, hey, if you're not going to have AJ Terrell on me and you're going to have D. Alford or whoever the second corner is, and I can win that not a lot of teams can, match up against that. Okay, then we have to play zone. All right, well, then they can run on us now because the Vikings run game is much better than it was in the past and more explosive with Aaron Jones. Or we have Hawkinson and Addison can run a two-man game. And now, Oliver's a nice, I know we made a joke, but he's a nice auxiliary player. Naylor has kind of had some moments too as an auxiliary player. So, yeah, they have just a group of guys that can punish this. And now if you want to have Jesse Bates leaning all the way over the hash when he's supposed to be a deep safety, all right, Darnold's willing to take those one-on-ones. Sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes, like against the Falcons, where a corner's falling down, or something like that, it works really well. So again, it's just the most important guy is probably KOC, O'Connell. Yeah. But man, it must be said, just the influence that a truly special player like Justin Jefferson can just unlock so much in the offense when a coach knows how to use them, and how much it kind of benefits the quarterback that knows what he's getting now too. Like Darnold's eyes are good right now, which is huge for him. It's not as chaotic with his eyes. His chaos comes when he's like, I have to make a big play here. That is where the chaos in Darnold comes. And when you watch that game against the Falcons in the second half against the Cardinals, you see more of him. All right, this is what I got. I'm chucking it, as opposed to like, I'm going to seek maybe something different out here. So again, this is good. If you're a Vikings fan, you should be stoked because it's like you want to be ascending into the playoffs. And Darnold had his crap out moments more early in the year. And now it's like, oh, okay, you're putting together this. That changes kind of maybe even how I view them. I'm looking Vikings as more of a contender, which is kind of a take I wasn't sure I was going to drop on the show, than maybe I was even a couple of weeks ago. Like, I'm like, hey, they can get hot. And Darnold's a big reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, again, they'll probably be the 5th seed in the NFC, depending on a couple of these more matchups, but that would lead them into a matchup with the Bucs in the 4th seed. Like, I think they could definitely. They're definitely similar to Pittsburgh. I think a team that I was skeptical about overall this year, but I think they can win a playoff game this year with this formula. 2 follow-up questions. Ooh, yeah. One we'll do a little quicker, but the first one just. I think we're feeling good about how this is going to go the rest of the season because like the formula's there, it's proven, they have the players, they have the coach, whatever. But it's at least worth noting the next 2 games, especially this one against Chicago, we've seen what this looks like before when they did so much to take Jefferson out of the game. I've had people ask me like, "Are you worried about that?" In fantasy, like with Justin Jefferson. I'm like, this is one of those situations, by the way, folks, where you're gonna worry about it. What are you going to do about it? Don't even bother worrying about it. Because what are you going to do? You're not benching Justin Jefferson. Let's not have this conversation. But it's also worth noting too, the Bears, because they're the Bears, don't have the same play calling head coach defensive guy in Matt Eberflus there. Maybe that will change the picture. But that was the game also where we saw Jordan Addison go off. Sam Darnold had a good game. So expectations with that week, and then also in Seattle, that one will be interesting to watch just because I know you and I are both like interested with what's going on there defensively.
Yeah, no, great call. Yeah, it's kind of I was cautiously optimistic about the Seahawks going into the season. And now if you just blacked out on the first 2 months and then just focus on the last couple of weeks, I'd be like, see, I told you guys about the Seahawks. I never in doubt. This is what it's all supposed to look like. With Ernest Jones, much better player, has really solidified that defense. So that's a great call on there. And again, it's kind of hard with the Seahawks because McDonald runs kaleidoscope scheme. So it's like,
totally,
I don't know what they're going to major in against them, but I bet you it's a lot of cover 2 to Jefferson's side. But that's what everyone else does. Might be 2-man. But that's the other thing is, so 2-man is another way to, really double team, quote unquote, a top receiver. Why teams can't run 2-man against the Vikings is Darnold can run. So again, when you have that changes. Vikings ran 2-man against the Falcons because Kirk ain't running. Teams run 2-man against the Jets because Aaron Rodgers ain't running, and that makes it really hard. You only have certain answers against that. We'll say against the Bears, though, as much as I like the Bears defense in the first half of the year, they're terrible now. Like they've just given up all hope. So like I think it was my little combined success rate, and explosive play rate since their bye week. I think they're the worst defense in the league. It's
sick.
Which is shocking to me because for 8 weeks they looked like a top 6 defense, top 5 defense. And but they've just totally fallen off. Explosive plays every which way. So even if they have a plan for Jefferson, and like you just said, Eberflus is gone, Phil Snow's gone, he's back in college now. it might just be a chaos ball in a more of a explosive chaos ball for the Vikings where botches happen and stuff like that. They do have good corners though. That must be said. Right. So yeah, schedule wise, it's like they might have answers for that, but O'Connell's been very good at finding solutions. And in a game like, say, the Seahawks or say these Bears, that if they focus on Jefferson, I bet you he gets a red zone target because that's how you keep him happy. Like, hey, you're not going to get all these catches on first and second down as we march up the field, but I bet you he'll get some red zone targets because that's how O'Connell kind of works it. Like, all right, we're going to get you the reward for kind of helping everybody else out.
Yeah, the Bears have actually played a lot of single high of late. They're like the third highest single high team in the league. I don't know. That seems interesting. I don't know if they'll go with that approach against this Vikings team. That would seem pretty weird. But still, the Packers in Week 16, that's a important matchup too, and they're like the second highest zone coverage team in the second half of the season, which is. I think that's an interesting note. Obviously, they've leaned into a lot of cover 2 stuff.
A lot of cover 2, right? Well. Yeah, that's been interesting. Yeah.
So I think that could be, if they go to more of that zone cover stuff, another explosive Jordan Addison game. So I think Addison has cemented himself in these next 3 matchups. I can pick spots where I think he's really going to go off. So he's somebody that I definitely think is going to start real quickly because we'll talk about this over the course of the offseason a ton. But just curious on this. Sam Darnold, right now, I think he is not back in Minnesota, which is tough just because he's played so well. But I think they want to go to McCarthy, all this stuff. And look, this could change if they go on a playoff run, right? I do think that might change the equation. But let's just live in a hypothetical world right now where he tests free agency. We've talked so much about, how Kevin O'Connell's important to this and how the other players are important to this and how they're leaning into Darnold's best traits. Yeah. Is there another spot that you can pick that this would work as well?
Oh, it's hard because this is such a good ecosystem.
I know. And I'm just so nervous the Raiders are going to give him, $200 million.
Well,
although, I don't know.
And I know we just praised how he's playing right now, but the Steelers, like if they want to like think they're upgraded, but I don't know. That's not like a Steelers move to just go like, all right, we had this one retread. All right, now we're going to sign another retread. They seem like they want to keep their people. That's how they always operate. Man, the ideal situation would be like, hey, Sam, sign a 3-year deal with the Rams, sit out this next year again, and then now you replace Stafford and you get to play with Sean McVay. Yeah. But I've been marinating on this a little bit. I wish I had a better answer. Like the best answer is the Jets. But the thing is, that'll never happen in a million years.
Toxic.
Because, and just the narrative of all of that. But I've seen head coach, Vance Joseph's the defensive coordinator for a team he used to be the head coach of, like, that's so maybe some things are different there. Or the Giants, one of those New York teams, but the Giants might have a top pick. They might fall in love with the guy, with a Shedeur or Cam Ward or anything like that. Man, they've been making it known that they like the Colorado practices. Oh my goodness. They've had videos of the GM there, the assistant GM there. So maybe looking at Giants Shedeur connection, but those are really the teams. I've really thought on this a lot, and I've been trying to find like a good, clean answer. And it's hard for me to find without it getting into like a messy kind of like discussion about, if they move from this guy and move off of this guy and everything like that. So to me, it's Pittsburgh and the New York teams, but then that turns into other conversations.
Yeah. Like is Darnold going back to the Jets? I don't think so. I wouldn't if I was him. Just
middle finger him.
Yeah, forget it. Maybe the Giants, but yeah, like you said, even the Raiders, they're going to have a high pick in the draft. I do think it would be they have a ton of cap space, obviously, next year. What if they hire Josh McCown as a coach? Bring him from Minnesota. That's his guy.
Okay.
You bring Sam Darnold. You try to bring some of this offensive system. I'm obviously sure that a lot of the leaning into Darnold's best tendencies obviously comes from Josh McCown, the quarterback coach. He's interviewed for head coaching jobs before. Obviously, it was under strange circumstances in Houston, but regardless, he's generally very well regarded. People like him, and again, you just keep this kind of going, and you have Myers, you have Bowers. I don't know anything about the receiver class, but if you do have that might be a little too high from what I hear about this receiver class. It's not like a bunch of tier 1 dudes like was last year, but still.
I just thought of one. The Titans? How much cap space do they have? I think it's $71 million next year. The Titans. Yeah. If they just want the Levis ride and they just want to go with the original chaotic quarterback,
my God.
That's an interesting. That's actually pretty funny to think about. But that's another one is the Titans, if they want to just eject out of the Levis experiment. Not even though I just did a Levis is encouraging last week, and then he follows that. Every time I praise Will Levis, he just
you can't
crap. He just sucks the next week. It's like so hard. That's
you weren't the only one on this show. It was brought up a lot about like, hey, Will, don't look now, but Will Levis is playing pretty good football. The statistics are actually pretty good. And then, he just has that kind of game.
It's just
all right.
That works.
Let's take a quick break. We come back. We'll talk through Bryce Young, and then we'll talk through what Nate is nerding out about this week right after this. All right, we're back. Let's talk through our third quarterback. Can we fix him? Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. This one's tough to talk about. Why is it working, Nate? Because we could talk about what we're seeing on the field, but we just do not know, what went on during Bryce Young's benching. There's some parts that are coming out now. Like I saw Steve Smith talk about on his show that Dan Morgan, the GM, who obviously Steve played with during his time with the Panthers, was intimately involved in the process of like what happened with Bryce during that benching. We just don't know like who the coaches that were in his ear and what they were kind of doing. That stuff's hard. But we can't really say like, why is this working? Why does he look so different? Because to me, Nate, I do think he looks like a very, very different player right now than he was during his rookie year. And certainly the first two games, like I think some of Bryce Young's worst football as a pro was the first two games of this year. But obviously this is now his best stretch. So like, in your opinion, what is different now with Bryce? And obviously, is this sustainable?
It's again, he's just, what was so surprising to me with Bryce Young was that especially how he played in college, and what I heard about him was that he's so cerebral and very smart. Like the story I heard a bunch on the scouting circles was Bill O'Brien saying that Bryce Young is the only quarterback that was smarter than Bryce Young that he's been around was Tom Brady. And that's saying something. Bill O'Brien, his talent evaluation's a little all over the place, but that is still saying something that he's comparing him and putting him in that platitude. And what was so surprising to me, maybe last year just being such a mess, but even in this year, was that he just seemed overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Like his head was going every which way. He didn't seem like he wanted to pull the trigger on any throw. He seemed like he was like, oh, maybe this isn't good enough. Oh, I'm going to start trying to create. Okay, I got to throw the ball away, which kind of speaks to him. Like he's good enough to not make bad decisions, but also, especially if you're drafted number one overall, you have to create plays and open up opportunities for your teammates and everything. What we're seeing now, post-benching, is him kind of just playing confident and playing like, it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to try this. It's okay to unpin the grenade. I keep using that adage, but undo it. And we see him against the blitz, against the Chiefs. We saw it last week against the Eagles, where it's just, he has a confident answer. And is it always the best answer? Maybe not. Can he execute it all the time? Maybe not. But he's making these decisions quicker, which is necessary for him because he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's accurate, but he has to always operate on time. He can't really hesitate at all. So that's what I'm really seeing. The offensive line is playing very well as well. They figured out the receivers. Adam Thielen coming back. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but him coming back, Leggett actually being a little more real than maybe I thought he would even be. He's not all the way there. We've talked about Coker, Tommy Tremble. Shout out Tommy Tremble. I still have a stock of him somewhere. Maybe it's behind me, but I have a Tommy Tremble stock somewhere. But I
think Sanders has played well too. The rookie tight end.
Sanders too. Yes, yeah, and they're dynamic. They're very fast tight ends too. And Tremble's always been a good blocker. Like even though he's built differently. But why I'm saying all Chuba Hubbard as well is that the surroundings are just they're not crap. They're okay. And that speaks to Dave Canales, who I know you're like, oh, I don't want to get him into the top 5. But Dave Canales has earned my respect. I think everybody that's been watching this stuff's respect of just how sound everything is. They don't make a lot of mistakes. Is it the most creative offense? I wouldn't say that, but every design makes a lot of sense. They do a lot of stuff that works off of the last play, which I know sounds like very simple, but sequencing is an issue for some coaches where they just don't want to call the same play twice, or they don't want to call a play action off that because the defense might be on it. Canales is very good and has really earned my respect as far as like, hey, yeah, we're going to be run first, but our passing game isn't going to be boring. It's just going to work off of our run first stuff. So saying all this stuff is that he is playing confident. He's playing accurate. He's playing to his strengths. That seems to be the theme of these quarterbacks. Play to their strengths. And that doesn't mean quick game. And I think that's what Frank Reich and the staff last year thought, oh, he doesn't have the strongest arm.
Great call.
Okay,
Yeah.
quick game. And then remember how tight everything felt with that Panthers offense last year? It was
dude. I mean, well, number
an
one,
all-time bad offense. Like
all-time bad offense, and I would say some of the all-time worst outside receiver play you are ever going to see. Like Thielen in the slot. I mean, there was a James Cohen and I got in this whole conversation last year, like in the middle of the season, where he's like, "We got to talk about Adam Thielen, man. Adam Thielen is balling out." And I'm not saying disrespectful. I'm not being disrespectful to Adam Thielen, who I want to actually talk about as a really good fantasy start the rest of the season here in a second. I'm not being disrespectful to Adam Thielen. I was like, James, he's not really balling out. He's just quite literally, sometimes it's BS when we say this, but quite literally the only thing they got going last year. I mean, Mingo and DJ Chark, holy hell, like I said, I mean, it's some of the worst outside wide receiver play you're ever going to see. So even, if Leggett he's a little volatile still. You got to make that play at the end of the game against the Eagles. He's made his mistakes, but like the dude can function. I mean, even David Moore, the guy can function out there, and it's freaking David Moore we're talking about here, and Coker's giving him. So like it's just very different surroundings for sure.
It is, and and he has played so much better, because it was looking like, okay, this guy's never going to make it. And I've never been the biggest Bryce Young guy, but now it's like, okay, this guy could be a viable starter, which is like, okay, all right, now we don't have to draft another quarterback. Now we don't have to do this. That changes a lot for their team, and he'd still improve and everything. I just think now it's just he's playing with that confidence I've seen, and also saw some creation against the Eagles, which was really encouraging. And that's where it was like people going like, okay, this is what he was showing at Alabama. He's not like actually trying to juke a guy. Like he juked out Nakobe Dean with a hezzy move, and I was like, I didn't see you pull a hezzy move all of last year, and now it's like because like he's trying, he's aggressive, and he only could be so aggressive. Again, doesn't have the strongest arm, but if he operates on time, that touchdown throw or the one that you just brought up with Leggett, that was a big boy throw, even if it's not like a big strong arm throw, but against the blitz with a guy coming down the barrel, and he doesn't take the hot answer, he takes the shot answer, which is because he's so accurate, and because when he does play on time, he can put it where he wants it. That's why that was kind of like, oh yeah, you can unlock these things because he's playing with confidence. So it's like, it's more possibilities are there. I do have like a player comparison that I just want to, I hinted this to you before.
I know it's coming. So I'm going to strap in for this, and I'm encouraging everybody else watching and listening to strap into this.
I like what Bryce Young is doing. Okay. So I'm going to compare quarterback A and quarterback B here. Quarterback A, and there's going to be some advanced stats here. I try to get a little grouping, but I just had to just show perspective of what is going on here. Okay. Season-long stats. This is quarterback A. Negative 0.07 EPA per dropback. Quarterback B, negative 0.08 EPA per dropback. Dropback success rate. Quarterback A, 44.1%. Quarterback B, 38.4%. I will bring up, let's go, explosive pass rate. Quarterback A, 13.6%. Quarterback B, 10.6%. QBR. Quarterback A, 40.1. Quarterback B, 26.6. Yada, yada, yada. You guys are getting picture. Quarterback A has a slightly better stats on all of this. Quarterback A is Desmond Ridder in 2023. Quarterback B is Bryce Young in 2024. So I just want perspective. I didn't splice this or split it based on his last month when he's come back from all that, but just want to provide perspective that he is playing better. But just remember, he was the number one pick. And the other guy, Ridder, was ran out of town, called the worst quarterback we've ever seen in our lives, where he's really more below average. But now
has played for two teams, been on two rosters in the last
all this stuff. Now he
months.
might be the Raiders quarterback on Monday. Just again, perspective on these things that he is playing better, where he's actually tolerable to watch, but still has a long ways to go to get to the level, which again, young quarterbacks are going to have to. But just want everyone to take a breath sometimes that he has improved, but we're not anointing him as a Pro Bowler, all pro right now and all that. So just had a little bit of cold water on this, that it is better. It is much better, but it's gone from worse than the league to adequate as opposed to outright good. And so I do want to just provide a little bit of that. Oh no, it's all of them. Yards per attempt, 7.3 to 5.9, completion percentage, TD rate, all those things. But I just kind of showing again that just better, but not all the way there.
Okay, I'm glad you did that, because That's important context, 100%. And look, I'm always the guy that's striving for the middle ground on players, that we don't have to go from, hey, this guy, he's either the absolute worst or he's the top 5 player in the league. And I think that Bryce Young, I mean, legitimately was one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL last year, if not the worst. And we're not at top 5 player in the league, but like you said, we're at functional starting level quarterback, which is a huge W from, I mean, most people listening to this show know that I grew up a Panthers fan. I'm no longer a fan. Who cares? Don't care. But it would say a complicated relationship with the team. But I still follow a lot of Panthers fans and keep up with the team. The vibes around that group from what it was in week 2 to what it is now, it's just stark. And that I think almost is better than any statistic to show you just what has happened with Bryce Young. Couple things to go on here. Number one, I do think, we talk about Canales. This is a huge credit to Canales, who I love that his offense is not that creative. It wasn't that creative in Tampa last year, but it's well structured. It's clean. He does sequence things really well, which, hey, there's a bajillion like cutesy play callers out there that can't sequence their stuff at all. And so that's a big credit to him. I like Liam Cohen and the offense in Tampa, which I think they mostly took a lot of what Canales was doing and just spiced it up a little bit, and added that creativity. So there's a little
something Barton at it.
Yeah, right. I mean, threw some Graham Barton in it, and we can run the football now. So I think that is sort of just a great kind of understanding of what Canales is as a play caller and coordinator. But I've said this on this show, is that Canales, for all the stuff about he's a hot shot offensive coordinator, this guy models himself as a Pete Carroll type, because he comes from Seattle and all that. And I think that is that's a bigger credit to him, that, hey, we can bench this guy and do what we do with him and bring him back. And everybody's on the same page and it feels really good. And with Bryce, I said this a little bit to you yesterday, and I definitely said this on the recap show earlier this week, that the most impressive thing to me about him right now is the confidence. And you see that most well expressed when he gets some pressure on him. He just, it's no longer play's dead. It's step up in the pocket, maybe boot out a little bit to the right and make a smart play. If there's a throw down the field, take it. If not, do a little get out of jail free card 4-yard scramble. It's not oh my God, what a play. It's just, let's get to the next down, and Kyler Murray, who he drew some comparisons to, from a size perspective, but not a skill set perspective. Okay, well, I'm telling you, when Kyler Murray does that stuff, step up under pressure and boot out to the right, it's not always a safe, smart play that happens next. Sometimes it's a disaster, So it's just that's sort of where Bryce is now. I think that's a good thing for him. You mentioned some of this stuff against the blitz. Worth noting, the next 3 teams he plays, which are Dallas, Arizona, and Tampa Bay. Since week 8, Tampa Bay has the second most dropbacks against the blitz. Cowboys are 5th, and Cardinals are 7th in terms of how often they blitz on passing plays. So it will be interesting to watch, especially because I do think Thielen, who is a guy, if you pick Thielen up off the waiver wire, you could probably start him against all 3 of those teams. Are really good matchups for a wide receiver. Maybe not as much Arizona because their pass defense has been better, but he's been sort of the answer against the blitz for Bryce. Yep. So I kind of like the way this is going. I want to see how it plays out the rest of the season, and I do think there's at least some players we can be interested in here.
Yeah, I know. Apparently, if anyone can hear this, my son is they didn't like the Bryce Young Desmond Ritter stats. He started screaming.
Nate, he is trying to save you for talking. You talked about Desmond Ritter in a slightly positive way.
He's like, not again.
He's trying to help you. Your son is trying. The son is trying to spare the father from the father's own sins. We'll just put it like that.
Yeah. It's got a Riddler moment, actually. That actually fits very perfectly. Sins of our father. That actually works very, very well in this concept.
But yeah, no, I think this is good for Bryce Young. I think we've got a good kind of understanding what's going on here. And I do think Thielen and Chuba Hubbard, especially, I mean, with Jonathan Brooks obviously out, he's gonna eat against all 3 of these defenses, in my opinion.
Remember a few weeks ago when we had our Chuba Hubbard discussion, and that was, we were talking, and he got paid the next day after, you're like, they should pay up. That was perfect.
And all the just myopic thinkers about running back contracts.
You only can have one. Why'd you draft one in the second round?
Well, they only got one now.
Yeah, and oh my God, it was even the commentator. Was it Sanchez for that game? But he was just going, man, Chuba Hubbard's going to need that ice bath, because they were just riding them touches over and over and over. But and we're talking about Canales though. he's rewarding the smart, hardworking players. And Hubbard's talented. Don't get me wrong. I love watching him run right now, but he will do the dirty work. I mean, he's great in pass pro and everything. So again, that's kind of like they're building culture here. And that was a big Pete Carroll thing. It's, fast energy. Dan Quinn's from the same line of thinking. It's all about fast. Be aggressive. If you make a mistake, be aggressive at least. And, you're seeing it. You're at least seeing, even if they're losing these close games, it's like, okay, that's a big first step to take as a franchise. Because I like you said, 2 months ago, it was like, oh man, this is just what this team is for the next foreseeable future. Now they actually have some life, and it's been fun to watch.
All right, those are three great topics that we did kind of a deep dive on there, which was fun because all three of them deserved it, and I think there's a lot of utility for people in their fantasy playoff runs for some of these kind of supporting characters in this offense. But let's get into a few of our other segments here, starting, Nate, with what you're nerding out about this week, which you got some more rookies to talk about here.
Yeah, it kind of carried over our conversation from yesterday. And really, I don't know why, but I watched some Jets Dolphins film this week, and I've watched a little bit of Jets offense in recent weeks. I wanted to talk.
You know
about
what, Nate? I'm glad that you're bringing this up. And this is what I was joking about before the show when we started taping. Is that on Football 301 we did the funeral episode for some of these teams that were contenders and are clearly not going anywhere. So it's like, all right, we don't have to talk about those teams anymore. Well, hey, buddy, on a fantasy show, you got to talk about them all.
Talk about them.
You can't say goodbye to any of them. You got to wait till when week 17 comes around. You take that foot off the gas. You don't got to talk about the worst teams in the league anymore. But you, Nate Tice, comes on the fantasy show and you're like, no, you know what, Harmon? I still want to talk about one of the worst teams in the league. So happy that you can do this here.
I know. We're like, all right, Steelers, Vikings. Okay, that's the good teams, guys. All right, we're talking Panthers and Jets now. Okay, so no, but they're two running backs, of course, Braylon Allen and now Isaiah Davis, who they took in back-to-back rounds, the 4th and 5th round. Braylon Allen, very young, talented, a better receiver. I always thought he had good hands, but a pretty good, viable receiver for screens and underneath stuff. You're not going to run choice routes with him or anything. But then Isaiah Davis, you might run choice routes with. They are really fun thunder and lightning pairing in this backfield right now that makes you forget that they have another really talented running back in that backfield who's hurt right now in Breece Hall, which makes this very messy if you're trying to sort this out dynasty wise.
Oh my God. Yeah.
If you nail this, there's rewards here because these are talented guys. Braylon Allen, I think can run any run. He's got a little more juice than I think he gets credit for. Good vision, big body. Just a good player. He's been a very fun pro to watch already. But Isaiah Davis is a Aaron Rodgers favorite. You can just tell. But also, he deserves touches. Like, he has some juice. His touchdown run against the Dolphins was fantastic. Got skinny through the hole, and then you saw some burst once he got through it. And both of these guys are viable players and good players, I would even say. It's just that it's a little messy in the backfield. And part of this, too, is that Olu Fashanu, their first-round pick at the left tackle, has really, really stepped up in the last few weeks where it's like, oh, yeah, this is why I had him and Alt and J.C. Latham. Joe Alt, right tackle for the Chargers, J.C. Latham, left tackle for the Titans. I had all three of those guys as top 10 players on my big board. Nice. I just was like, hey, I think all three of these guys are good. It's kind of just what flavor you like. I liked Latham a little bit, and then Alt won me over. But anyways, Fashanu was the guy of this class going into it. And then the other guys kind of rose up. But, oh yeah, you're really talented. Oh yeah, you are a legitimate future blindside protector for the Jets. And that was really cool to watch him, especially against the Dolphins. He only went against Chop Robinson once. He won the rep, though. But seeing him in the run game, he's good in the run game, which was one of the concerns he had coming out of college. But seeing him be a good run blocker on top of his pass protection stuff, he's very smart, he plays tough. Excuse me. These three rookies, on top of some other talented players they have, is encouraging for a Jets team kind of going through hell right now. But man, it's been fun to watch that no matter who's in the backfield for the Jets, they're making the most out of it. Some of the other blocking along the Jets offensive line could be a little shaky. The details a little iffy. The tight ends, like all of them are getting worse there. Like Jeremy Ruckert's worse now than he was in college. To keep my eye on the Jets tight end coach and seeing what they're doing there because there's a lot of lack of details, but that's just the Jets overall. But these young talented running backs are very real. Like these are not just spot fill guys. These are not what's his friggin' face? Alexander Madison for the Vikings for years. We're like, hey, just wait. He's going to replace Dalvin Cook. Just check him out. And then you're like, oh, these guys actually have talent. How you discern it in fantasy is going to be interesting. But again, like I said, if you can nail this backfield, like there's down the road, there's going to be dividends to pay because they have so much talent. And then, like I said, Fashanu looks like already playing like a good left tackle, which is huge for that offensive line, and just huge that you nail your first round pick, obviously.
I feel like this real tangent there is that you mentioned the tight ends. I always thought about this when the Chargers, were really struggling to run the ball. And it's like, they have Austin Eckler and like some guys on the offensive line. Like, why do they struggle? Watch tight ends. Watch tight ends. Those tight ends were a mess as blockers. By the way, one of the guys that they were playing a bunch was Gerald Everett, and the Bears couldn't run the ball. At the beginning of the year. I wonder why. Wonder why that was. Anyways, and your points about it is like
the Steelers' run game is picking up once they got all their tight ends out there.
Especially one of them weighs like 300 pounds or whatever. But anyways, like this team is a good. They got good backs. Like, I mean, Breece Hall is really good when he's healthy. I wonder what the future of this looks like because these two guys are showing something. In the next 3 weeks, Jacksonville, Rams, Buffalo. These are 3 exploitable kind of run game matchups here. Obviously the Rams defense is improving. The Bills defense is good, but I think you can get them with some run concepts here. These two guys could be really interesting to watch, and we might not see Breece Hall for the rest of the regular season, I would imagine, just because of hey, we're like, let's get to next year. There's no reason for you to risk a serious injury, and these two guys are viable. Again, I wonder what that makes like the equation look like long term with this backfield, just because these two guys, like, I like your breakdown on both of them, where Allen is, they used him a lot early in the year and they kind of got away from him. But I think he makes a really good complement for Davis. So that should be interesting. And the Fashanu thing cannot be overstated. If that was Joe Douglas's last gift to the franchise, pretty good move there. That was a good one because that's going to matter for, again, we might not care about the Jets from an NFL perspective, like what's left of this ghost team, but people still have to start Garrett Wilson in fantasy. People probably still have to start Devontae Adams in fantasy if you made your playoffs with him there. And these 3 matchups, like we're gonna want to see the ceiling of Wilson against Jacksonville and Adams and stuff like that. And having a real deal guy at left tackle matters.
Yeah, absolutely does. And one that it's not just theory. Like, it's nice for me to like project type of guys, but now that it's like honestly against the Dolphins, he had one bad play, like one outright negative play. And that's huge when you're blocking for 50 something, 60 something plays. That's huge when the rest are neutral or better. So whoever steps in for this franchise, having a left tackle, having a legitimate receiver, having legitimate talent in the backfield, having talent on defense is not all the way terrible. Like if Fashanu was a bust, then it's like, oh my God, like we got 3 spots we have to fill out on the offensive line. So having that and a true needle mover is huge.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's still the Jets. So
it's still
what can you do? Okay, let's take our last break. When we come back, we'll look at the injury report and preview Thursday Night Football right after this. All right, we're back. Let's get to our segment here. Let's take a look at this week's injury report presented by healthcare.gov. Each week, Nate and I pick one injury we are monitoring that could have a major fantasy ripple effect this week. Can be anything. Defender, maybe a defensive unit that's got some injuries, leaves a matchup to exploit for the offense, or it's a starter going down that opens up a role for a backup. Can be anything. Nate, mine's pretty gross, so I'm going to let you start off first this week.
Mine's pretty gross. Mine's like a quantity thing. I think I even mentioned one of their guys hurt a couple of weeks ago when we did this segment, but it's the entire Lions defense being hurt. By my count, they have 18 defensive players listed with some type of injury, meaning injured reserved or questionable. 18 defensive players. Crazy. That is a whole group of starters and 7 backups. 12 of them are on IR. As of right now, it would seem that if like just playing today, based on like who is questionable, Jack Campbell would be their only day 1 starter in their front 7 that would play if they had to play today. But hopefully some of these guys come back. Aleem McNeil suffered a concussion in their last game on last Thursday. Hopefully an extended mini bye will help with that. But also others on their defensive line. DJ Reader's questionable. Josh Paschal's questionable. Oh, God, I've never said this guy's name out loud, but I know him. Levi Onwuzurike is also questionable, but all these guys, they might play But again, the fact that they're banged up going against an offense in the Bills that just put up 42 on the Rams and have this guy named Josh Allen and have a viable run game and have a bunch of pass catchers, this Lions is not ideal. But this Lions defense has played extremely hard under Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell. Like they are, no matter who's plugged and play there, they play smart, they play hard. But it's just kind of, how long can you keep this up? Especially going against good offense, against good offense, against good offense. It's really cool to watch them play above their weight, all these backups in there. It's just very hard to do over time. So have to mention that one as kind of the main injuries to kind of keep track of for this week, especially going against that Bills offense.
Especially, going against that Bills offense. And something that's super interesting with the Detroit Lions is, we kind of mentioned that typically throughout the course of the season, we're like, oh, this is a team that just gets thumped by slot receivers, that was been a matchup to exploit consistently. Well, if you're like me, you definitely know this because of how personally exposed you are to this player. The Packers' top slot receiver, Jaden Reed, and I know he wasn't playing a full-time role because he was, they were going real heavy, all that stuff, and they take Jaden Reed off the field in those scenarios, whatever. That's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down that we won't do here. He didn't have a catch in that game, and actually since week 10, the Lions are 24th in yards per game allowed to slot receivers. So, and I don't know if that's just more because other issues have cropped up, that teams aren't just hammering this one matchup, right? Because of all these injuries. You could certainly, I think, get them more in the run game definitely now than you could at different points of the season. So that's going to be interesting for the Khalil Shakir matchup because he's clearly, in my opinion, Buffalo's best pass catcher this season. That's going to be a big matchup to watch there. The Bears in week 16, the Niners in week 17. Obviously, all of those teams have some slot receivers to consider there, but also just generally run games that will be. I mean, is this going to be a big we were just coming off this massive Josh Allen game, massive Khalil Shakir game. Amari Cooper had more air yards than any other receiver at any point this year. Are we going to see them dial it all the way back now and just rely more on James Cook and Ray Davis?
Right. And they might. That's what's really makes the Bills so viable as far as like a true contender is that they can shift how this offense is going to be. Okay, let Josh go. All right. Last week against the Rams, they just abandoned the run game. They're just like, all right, let's let our supernova quarterback be a supernova quarterback. Like, I don't know, it's not the worst strategy, but it's a great point to bring up that it could be the slot, it could be the run game, which is what everybody's faced tough sledding against this Lions team. And that's another thing that even the Bills will go heavy with the 6 offensive linemen. So they were actually equipped, even if the Lions were fully staffed. But instead, they got a lot of part-time employees working that late shift. I'm just going to keep this analogy going when the Buffalo Bills contingent comes in. But no, I do think that in a month, this will be really curious to see. But as far as how they mitigate it, the Lions. But really, I'm curious also to see the next couple of weeks of like, all right, how do we get through this? And maybe this week. Even though they've had, again, that mini buy is huge. Having that extra 3 days to like kind of figure this out might be something that'll help them out with this. But also, it's just really, 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 really hard to do.
Yeah, Aaron Glenn deserves a lot of credit for keeping the defense not even just viable, but still pretty good despite all of these injuries. So it's not just become a total like, hey, print fest from an opposing offensive standpoint. I want to talk about. This is not a new injury, but we know now at this point that Mac Jones is going to be starting for the Jacksonville Jaguars over the course of the rest of the season. Trevor Lawrence is on IR. He's not coming back after the concussion and the shoulder injury. A little weird, the whole way that went down. I don't know. But either way, Mac Jones is starting the rest of the season. And the reason I want to bring this up is twofold. First of all, and look, I'm guilty of this as anybody because I am the biggest spokesman of big receiver, okay, this is what I'm about the receivers, the whole deal. So typically it's easy to just, oh God, quarterback downgrade. This is not good. Let's immediately just go to disaster mode because the receiver's not going to get the most of what you want. However, Can we just be real for a second? Mac Jones is like not the worst thing to happen, and like there are worse backups to get thrown out there. Okay, there are teams dealing with worse than Mac Jones. Mac Jones is obviously he's a bust for the Patriots, and he definitely flamed out there in rather embarrassing circumstances. Not all on him, by the way. I mean, UNC's next head coach had Matt Patricia as the guy's offensive coordinator for a long time. All right, so I mean. Let's just note that.
Coached his offense his whole career, right?
Totally. Anyways, Mac Jones was definitely, again, it was a bad flame out in New England, whatever, but I think he's a perfectly fine backup quarterback, and he can deliver the ball to a top receiver, which Brian Thomas is definitely developing into, and that's what we care about from a fantasy perspective on this team. And even maybe more important than Mac Jones, maybe this is a Mac Jones stat, and he just like understands the assignment. But over the last 2 weeks since Jacksonville's bye, and maybe this is part of it too, Gabe Davis has been banged up. They're coming off a bye. But in these last 2 games, Brian Thomas has seen 28.8% of the team's targets. Going into the bye, he was a sub 20% target player. This is a big deal for Brian Thomas. Like, the explosive upside might not be there because it is a Mac Jones offense. Whole offense is worse, whatever. But again, we're simply asking for Mac Jones to get the ball to Brian Thomas. So far, it looks like he's capable of doing that.
I love it. Just keep Mac Jones away from some of his home cooking in Jacksonville. No, it would be good. He's I think he's gained some weight.
I don't care. Gain as much weight as you want.
Just get that ball out.
Just get the ball out to number 7. That's it.
As someone that became a Mac Jones isn't as good as everyone's saying Mac Jones is now underrated. Now it's like, all right, now it's still like, that's how I felt like the last year or two, because it was just like, dude, do you see what's happening there? Like they're just like trying to kill him. Like that's what it looked like at times. They're like, yeah, let's give him a terrible coach, give him no offensive line, put it all on his plate, and good luck, Mac. Watching him with the Jags, it's just, at least he's gonna get the ball out, and at least he's gonna be accurate with it. So no, I love that you're bringing this one up, because like you said, it's not. God, we've seen some bad quarterbacks thrown out there. I mean, even like the Chargers on Sunday night, also, Sunday night, also Heineke's back out there, and you're just like, oh God, yeah, oh man, And I have enjoyed some Heineke in my life, but that was, I know what he is now. Mac Jones, I think, is a little more sound than Heineke too. So like, at least he knows what he is. So I like the shout out.
All right. That is our Week 15 injury report presented by healthcare.gov. And with that, let's get to our final segment here. Thursday night preview, big game here, Nate. Rams 7-6 going against the 49ers 6-7. There's obviously playoff implications for both teams. The Rams probably can't afford to drop this one. If they win, they have, according to NFL.com, they have a 50% chance to go to the playoffs. If they lose, drops to 23%. I think the Niners are out, but if they lose this game, it's beyond over. I don't give much of a chance to make it, even if they win this game. But they could definitely spoil the season for the Los Angeles Rams. The Niners are favorites right now, 2.5-point favorites at home. What do we like from this game?
I actually like a few. I'll start on the 49ers when the 49ers have the ball. I like Purdy over 244.5 passing yards.
Ooh, okay.
Who they hand the ball to?
Patrick Taylor. Where's your Nate? Give me your Patrick Taylor full scouting report.
Oh God, I have none. After like the 5 reps I've watched him in his career, just another Patrick Taylor. Yeah, sure. Trot him out there. No, he's adequate. Like, he's fine. He can walk and chew gum at the same time. I'll put it.
All I know is he's my least favorite player in the NFL because he's not Isaac Guerrero. And as I told you yesterday, oh my God. I mean, it's there's a lot of things that are. I've complained a lot about my own fantasy teams in this segment, or this podcast, so I should stop. But whatever.
That's me and my dynasty playoffs, and I was like going against Rico Dowdle and going like, oh yeah, I picked him off the waiver wire like 2 years ago, and then like cut him because it was like, oh yeah, he's not going to get touches. Like last year, I was like, oh yeah, they're never going to give it to him, and then now it's like, oh, that would have been really nice to have for a playoff playoff push, another viable starting running back who's getting a ton of carries. No, Purdy over 244.5 passing yards, just think this team is a Chuck first team. I really do. I just think that he's going to have opportunities to do it, and going against this Rams defense that does nice things, but they have to key on one thing because they just don't have the horses for it. And with all the movement that the 49ers do with their passing game as far as the protections, that's going to be good against this Rams team. Okay, we can shore up against that pass rush. Their back end can't hold up. Gash. Where I actually am surprised it's at 244.5. I thought that might be able, but about 10, 15 yards higher. The last time these two teams played earlier this year, Purdy went for 292. 22 of 30 for 292 and 3 touchdowns. So yeah, pretty good day. Nice little 13.3 yards per completion for Purdy there. So kind of thinking the same thing where it's a lot of chunks for him. And the receiver, pass catcher that I like him throwing to is Kittle. Yeah. With all the zone coverage, George Kittle over 56.5 receiving. I think this is his day. I know Debo has it wasn't even a cryptic tweet, but had his tweet.
Yeah, it wasn't cryptic at all.
It wasn't cryptic at all.
Well, he's kind of a hybrid player. For a receiver, it was pretty weak on the cryptic scale. So as a hybrid player, he got some.
He's not fully a receiver.
He's not fully a receiver.
Receiver.
He doesn't have the full receiver tweet. For him to just say like, "I'm not struggling, just not getting the ball." Did you see he got community notes on that one? Did you see this?
Actually,
somebody put community notes on it and said he leads the team in drops. He is struggling. You can show it on the screen for YouTube, but that is pretty tough.
Pretty funny.
That's pretty tough.
That's pretty funny.
I was going to go under Debo 49.5 receiving yards. And I feel like there's a chance like, he's tweeting about it, squeaky wheel gets the grease. But I think they're done with Debo. I think they're
I know Kyle Shanahan. He's the opposite.
No, yeah, exactly.
You're going to complain about it? Well, guess what?
You're saying that this is my fault? Well, All right, buddy. You're getting 2 targets. Enjoy it.
Don't bite the hand that drew up the play.
Literally, yeah.
That's kind of, I like that. Yeah, I'd go under Debo receiving. But yeah, and Kittle over receiving because again, this is a zone heavy team.
Correlates.
And this is the type of defense that he eats against, especially if they attack over the middle. So that kind of combination, and if you're throwing that Debo under, that all makes sense to me. I love the narrative we're building there for our betting narrative for that side of the ball.
Hey, you know what? It worked last week with the Gibbs under. I mean, it's probably not because of our stupid narrative, but it worked with the Gibbs under and the Gibbs receiving. It all worked out in the end.
It worked out. No, okay, no. But
results over
this side of the ball. Those are the ones I had. Rushing wise, it's like I feel like it's a fool's errand trying to figure out. The backfield touches for this game. Debo might get some running back touches. But as far as receiving, I feel like it kind of makes sense for at least the side of the ball.
On the Rams side of the ball, I mean, this is such an easy, clean game from a fantasy perspective because, I mean, on the offense with the 49ers, it's tricky, right? I mean, I do think Jennings has proven himself to be an every week starter. Kittle is obviously an every week starter, but you're probably not messing around, honestly, with any of those guys. I like your Purdy optimism, and I think Purdy is probably a top 10 fantasy quarterback this week. On the Rams side of things, it's just so much cleaner because we know where the ball's going, and even Demarcus Robinson is like questionable for this game, and he's like the one other kind of semi-target earner here or semi-touch earner in this offense. Otherwise, it's Cooper Kupp, it's Puka Nacua, and it's Kyren Williams. So from a betting perspective, I know it's a big number, 87.5 receiving yards, and obviously he just had a big game last week, but I feel like it's another big Puka game coming in here. I'd go over on 87.5. Couple of reasons here. One, he's number 2 in both yards per route run against zone and man coverage. Right now he is balling out of control. I don't want to do it right now because we'll do this show. This will be a 2-hour pod, but I'd love to have like a discussion with you about Puka and like kind of where he is. I think he's jumped a level this year for sure.
I think so too.
Yeah,
he's dunking on guys.
At the catch point, that's where it is. And I've talked about that a lot. But regardless, so top 2 in yards per route run against man and zone coverage. The zone coverage stuff is actually. Everybody on this team is really high against zone coverage, but man coverage, Puka's the only guy that really is super, super productive against man. And if you look at the 49ers, coverage-wise, they obviously play more zone than man. Everybody plays more zone than man, but when they play man coverage, they give up the 6th most points per drop back. So I think like this is an area where maybe Puka can get them for a few more big plays.
I love that. I wasn't sure I actually was kind of leaving that. I'm glad you kind of took one of those, because I was like, do I want to go Kupp or do I want to go Nacua for kind of leaning on that? But so no, I'm all about it. And also, It's his show. As much as Kupp is still, a good player, it's Nakua's the ace. Like, and they design things for Nakua now. And Tom Brady, we mentioned, Charles and I talked about this. I thought he did a really good job on Sunday, but he kept talking about that's another sail route. Oh, that's another sail route. That's those outbreakers. Kind of tell who the coaches want to get the ball on that concept. It's who's the intermediate guy.
Yeah.
Puka Nacua? Okay. That's who they want the touches going to, which, I mean, obviously makes sense, but just kind of, again, reading between the lines of it all. So I'm totally with you. And also 49ers defense has got Hufanga back and at safety. Him and Malik Mustafa on the back end are run first players. They can bite up a little bit against play action. And this is where you attack Devondre Campbell in coverage and not Fred Warner. You do not attack Fred Warner, but Devondre Campbell maybe. So you get a lot of those kind of play action, Nakua on the move over routes that kind of attacks that kind of voided area over the intermediate parts of the field. So I could really picture that happening.
What about anything Kyron Williams wise? I mean,
I like his receiving yards.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cause it's
over 9.5 receiving. I
like it.
Just that Campbell thing I just mentioned too. And I can maybe see a check down happening, but also a red zone screen. Like they love those, especially against a defense like that. Like you attack a Fred Warner that's super aggressive and those safeties doing that classic Rams play action. Okay. And then throw the screen off the play action because you're trying to get them running every which way, being too aggressive. So I could maybe see this being a Kyron Williams game. And I think the last time they played, he had 20 yards or so receiving. I think one of them was on a play com like I'm talking about.
27 yards and a touchdown.
27.
He's tied week 3 and 2. He had 27 yards receiving. Those are the most of the season. I mean, he over the last 4 games, 0, 0, 9, 10. Yeah. But I like the betting on that change there. I mean, he played 80%.
You don't need to throw to Kyron when Puka and Cooper Kupp are getting open like that.
Exactly. But I like designing a few screens, and look, it's McVay. So man, I like this. Love the love this one here. I like all of our bets this week. Who do you think wins this game before we wrap it up?
I'm going with the Rams because they need it. Like that, like the 49ers are more just like, I mean, they had a nice game against the Bears, but it's kind of like who needs it more state. So I am leaning towards the Rams, but I think this is going to be I love 49ers Rams games. Yeah. I really do, because also McVay and Shanahan, even though they're friends, they have a little bit of a rivalry.
Yeah. Friendship rivalry. So, yeah, that's why I was going to say Rams too, just because typically McVay has had their number. So I mean, I like it.
No, I'm excited.
All right, Nate.
One. Yeah.
Hell of a pod. We covered a lot of ground here. What are you working on this week that the people can check out?
So because I am a hack, I was like, what am I going to write about? Our editor, Al Toby, he was hitting me up, and I just went, you know what? I'm going to write about non-quarterback rookies. So carrying over our conversation, if you had our podcast, and maybe I'll dive in, have some more numbers for you available on that, but that is what I am writing. Also podcast Football 301. Charles, me did our rookie check-in yesterday, and then me and Charles for our Thursday show will be previewing week 15.
You are not a hack if you are. It's called content synergy. Okay.
Great call.
Content synergy. All right. On that note, that is going to do it for us today. This has been the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast presented by healthcare.gov. On Friday, Andy Behrens and Tara Roberts join me to preview all of Sunday's week 15 action. Until then, we are out.